Good morning, guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Last Shot NBA show here on Little Birdie TV. Always brought to you by our good friends at topsport.com.au. And it is Friday morning. Friday morning means we are joined by old mate Benyam Kidane from NBA Australia. BK, how are you, sir?
Good to be with you, my man. How you living?
I'm living good. You know, I woke up this morning and I did what any other grown man does, and I went sneaker shopping online. So, you know, that's just the way things are for me on a Friday morning. So it is what it is. BK, we've got a lot to talk about. There's a tweet that I want to talk about first up because I know you're a fan of this guy here. Michael Beasley yesterday tweeted out, by the way, every 10 seconds, another person that can't guard me comes into the world. He did mean world and not word there. BK, what did you think about? I know you're a Beasley fan. What did you think about this tweet when you saw it?
You know, I'm all about Michael Beasley. He's using 11% of his brain, but he's right. There probably is like 200 people that can guard Beasley.
Well, I would actually go further than that and say no one's guarded him because he's not playing anywhere right now, is he?
I think he might be overseas somewhere.
Still? He's still over there?
Get my man back in the league. He was in summer league with the Blazers, but I was hoping this would be the season he made his return. But we might have to wait a little longer to get Bees back in. That's my guy. Listen,
if we get Bees back in, I'm starting to vote to bring J.R. Smith back out of retirement. Like, forget that college life, kid. Come back to the NBA.
Let's get J.R. back. Let's get Swaggy back.
Let's bring back the band.
Reassemble the Avengers. Let's go.
All right, BK. Let's go around the NBA. We've got a lot to talk about yesterday. Steph Curry, he's 10 3-pointers shy of breaking Ray Allen's all-time record. Went into yesterday's game needing 16, which, I mean, the all-time record for three-pointers in the game, I believe, is 14 by Klay Thompson. So it wasn't totally out of the question with guys like, you know, Steph Curry. He didn't get it. He only had 6 3-pointers yesterday. So 9 shy of tying Ray Allen, 10 to break. BK, he could absolutely shatter this record just given the fact that Curry's probably going to play another 4, maybe 5 years or so. Who knows?
The fact that he was 16 away and we were like, oh, he could do that. Like, that in itself is absurd. But it'll be pretty cool if he can hit 10 in the next game playing against his brother Seth, and then more likely the following game against the Pacers. But that I was talking to some mates about this the other day. Who could possibly break this record? Whatever Steph finishes on, like, this guy probably isn't even in the league yet. Like, just given the way things are going, like, is there anyone in the league that you could see conceivably catching Steph Curry?
No, and that's my thing. Like I said, if he plays for another 4 or 5 years, he's obviously, you know, going to shatter this thing by a long, long way. And this is going to be one of those records like John Stockton with the assist.
Yeah.
Like, who's coming into the league and breaking John Stockton's assist record? He played for about 115 years in the same team. You know, that's one of those records that, for me, I just don't see it being broken in my lifetime. And that 3-point record, I mean, Steph's averaging, I think, 5.5 made this year. Or this season, which I think might be around his career average, BK. I don't know if you...
Yeah, it's about his career average. He's shooting a slightly lower percentage this season, but he's just getting up a lot more shots this season.
Yeah, and he's still making them, you know, at his career clip. So that's just some ridiculous numbers. And I remember when Mark Jackson was, you know, head coach of the Warriors, and he said this was the best shooting backcourt of all time. And I remember laughing at him going like, what the hell is this guy
Everybody did.
Everyone did. And it's turned out that they've been the best shooting backcourt of all time.
It's pretty nuts to think about it in that regard, that like the Steph Curry record will probably live as like one of those Wilt Chamberlain records where people are looking at it in 20 years like, no way this happened. Like, no one can do this. Like, it's pretty nuts when you kind of put it in historical context. And given the way that we remember Ray Allen as a three-point shooter, it was obviously more of that later in his career. I mean, people forget off the bounce Milwaukee, Seattle, Ray Allen, but the fact that he will go down probably as, you know, the best or one of the best shooters in NBA history. And Steph has just kind of strolled past this record in about half the games. It took Ray Allen 1,300 games.
Yeah.
Steph's at 786.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like I said, I think this is going to be a record that lives on well into the future. BK, Boston Celtics played yesterday against the LA Clippers. 23 turnovers for the Boston Celtics. Head coach Ime Udoka was not pleased. He said, we didn't do ourselves any favors by just handing them points. The effort and inconsistency is frustrating at times. They came back from 21 down to get within one at one point. But when you give up 33 points off turnovers, you're just not going to win any games, are you, BK? Actually, I think they gave up more than that, wasn't it?
I think it was about 21 they came back from. But I think the more glaring issue is the fact that you're doing this against a Clippers team without Paul George.
Yeah.
And, Brandon Boston went crazy on him. And in a close game like that, where you are forced to dig yourself out, when you're coughing the ball over like that, I think, Robert Williams had like 6, Tatum had like 6, and it's tough. I don't really know what to make of this Celtics team because, Jaylen Brown has been in and out of the lineup, which has made things tough. But the Celtics are actually got a better record without him in the lineup at 7-5 than with him in the lineup at 6-8. So none of it really makes any sense. Dennis Schroeder, I think, has been actually pretty good for the Boston Celtics. He was a nice little pickup for them. He's kind of stepped into that offensive hole that Jaylen Brown has left. But with December 15 kind of approaching, if you're GM Brad Stevens, you're kind of looking at this team. It's not really where they thought they would be. They probably had higher expectations than what their roster actually realistically was. But do you think they maybe try and make a move and try and revamp this roster? Because as constructed, they're still a ways away off the leading pack in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, no, I definitely do think they have to make a move. If you look at their record, they're 13-13, which is the same record that they had at the same time last year after 26 games. So, I look at someone like Ime Udoka, right? And he's obviously the first-year head coach. I don't know if he's the man for this sort of role or what's required from the Boston Celtics at the moment. So some of it is the coaching for me, and then some of it is that roster. And even when Danny Ainge was in charge over there and Brad Stevens was the head coach, I wasn't sold on this roster. It just, they were there, but, I just never saw how they could get to there, right? And now they've even fallen kind of behind where they were initially. So I definitely think that they have to make a move, whether it's before December 15 or before the NBA trade deadline in Feb, they have to make a move.
Yeah, I mean, probably their best move of the summer was getting 35-year-old Al Horford back, which is probably an indication of where you're at. I mean, obviously Dennis Schroeder has been big for them as well, but I don't think between those two guys is that really enough.
It's not.
And Marcus Smart's been a guy who's kind of been dangled in different trade scenarios, and I think once that December 15 rolls around, we'll probably know a little bit more. That's when obviously players who signed in the summer can be traded. But if you're the Boston Celtics, I don't think you're really we're a young team and we're about to come up. Like Jason Tatum is entering his prime. Jaylen Brown is entering his prime. Like these are the years you really need to start laying those foundations. So I don't know how many more kind of we're on the way seasons the Celtics can really have before they have to do something.
No, I think the excuses are done, for that sort of thing. And like you mentioned, they're in their prime, and you're sort of treading a rope of, you get into a Dame Lillard situation where, the team's going one way and your star players trying to win right now, and the team's going regressing in a sense.
Yeah,
so
the treadmill of mediocrity.
Yeah. We'll see what happens with the Celtics. Another team I want to quickly touch on is the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid's back, BK, and he's been playing at an incredible level. Dominated the Hornets in a back-to-back. They've played them, twice this week. 43 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists on Monday, 32 points, including 23 in the second half yesterday. Team is 4-2 since he's come back, BK. They hadn't won consecutive games since November the 6th, and all of a sudden they've won 3 in a row, and they're half a game back of the Washington Wizards in 5th place there. BK, how much of this is just getting guys back, healthy and on the roster, and how much of this is actually, the team playing better?
I think it's 100% getting Joel Embiid back, because the way their offense is set up this season, everything is running through Joel. I mean, he's a great, passer out of the pick and roll. He attracts double teams, gets it out to those 3-point shooters, and everyone just kind of orbits around Joel Embiid. He's the best post player in the league, up there with guys like Nikola Jokic. So the fact that he's kind of coming back, from COVID as well, and he even admitted, that he is kind of struggling a little bit, just trying to get himself back to that level. But I mean, in the 6 games since he's been back, he's been nothing short of amazing, and it's no coincidence the Sixers are kind of back flying. I mean, Matisse Thybulle and Tobias Harris, they were also in and out of the lineup with the COVID health and safety protocol. So there hasn't really been a ton of consistency for the 76ers team. So now that you get Joel back, you can kind of fill in the pieces around him and try and make a nice little run here. They do have an interesting schedule coming up: the Jazz, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Heat, and the Nets. So maybe we do find out a little bit more about this team and I guess the shape Joel Embiid is in over the next sort of 5-6 games.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think the next 5-6 games are really going to tell us a lot. But I also feel like with Philadelphia, they're in that kind of sort of Milwaukee phase of things where they've got everyone healthy now, but now they're really making a run. They're going to climb up the Eastern Conference rankings, the standings, I should say. And, once the playoffs come around, if they're healthy, they could make a nice little run in the playoffs.
And this is all still coming without Ben Simmons as well. There's still that kind of elephant in the room, which they did a pretty good job at the start of the season. They got out to like an 8-2 start. And so there's still that lurking in the background that could potentially change the makeup of the roster if a trade does come through for Simmons in the coming months.
And I think that's definitely going to happen because you can't have this whole situation lingering throughout the season. BK, there is a championship contending team. You mentioned something to me yesterday and it got me thinking, right? So we said we're going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets, right? They're still 0-6 against championship contending teams. They lost to Houston yesterday. KD obviously didn't play, which goes to show you how good KD really is. Harden's return game, he had to Houston, I should say. He had 25 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists. Probably his best game of the season, BK. Now, what I want to talk to you about is 2 things. One, has James Harden turned a corner because he's had a very inconsistent season? Can we look at this and say this is where his season really turned around? And 2, you mentioned about the Brooklyn Nets, they've been playing elite defense. And I want to pick your brain on that because I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. So I just want to see what you're seeing from the Brooklyn Nets.
Well, firstly, it's a market improvement from last season. I think they were the number 22 team defensively and the number 1 team offensively. So they were just getting by on getting buckets. Obviously, the makeup of this roster this season is a little bit different. And I think the fact that, Patty Mills and DeAndre Bembry have come into the starting lineup of late with Joe Harris and Kyrie out of the lineup. So you get 2 guys like that can play defense, orbiting around, James Harden and Kevin Durant. And then it's the other guys coming off the bench. It's Nick Claxton, it's James Johnson, it's Bruce Brown. They have some nice defensive pieces there. And I think the game against the Mavs was probably the best showing that they put forth. They held the Mavs and Luka to 13 points in that fourth quarter. And they were just swarming everywhere on the perimeter. The rotations were clean. The hustle was there. So the fact that the Nets haven't necessarily flown out of the gates offensively this season, they're really just hanging their hat on the defensive end of the floor that I think is sort of going under the radar a little bit. Guys like James Harden and KD kind of paper over a lot of the cracks, but I think the defense has definitely been a big reason why they're on top of the Eastern Conference right now.
I don't know. I do think that their defense has improved from the start of the season, but I don't know about elite. That was the part that got me. That was the part that got me. BK, Harden and Durant lead the league in minutes played. Durant obviously out yesterday with rest. Is this going to be an issue for them moving forward? These guys playing such a heavy load?
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be, right? Like, and we won't know until the postseason arrives because that's when you do get that congestion in the schedule. You're traveling, you're going back and forth for these games, and that's really when the intensity picks up. So I think during the regular season that when healthy, I mean, obviously with Curry out, but once guys like Joe Harrison and that come back into the lineup, they will have a little bit more depth that can kind of take a little bit of the pressure off KD and Harden. But I think if you're on the Nets, you do kind of have to have one eye on the postseason because when you're operating with 2 stars instead of 3. We saw what happened last season with the Milwaukee Bucks in that in that playoff series. A series I think they would have won if healthy. So you think that's got to be in the back of their minds coming into this playoff run. We're still a long ways away, but it's definitely something that I think the Nets will be pretty cognizant of, because I know KD can do everything, but I don't know if you want to put him in that position for the whole regular season.
Yeah, you mentioned, we've seen what they can do with 2 stars instead of 3. They've done all this without Kyrie Irving. I don't think Kyrie is going to be back this season, to be perfectly honest. But, we saw what happened with 2 stars. And the thing is, if they lose one of those 2 stars, whether it's Harden or Kevin Durant, then they're fully done. They're not going to win. They're not going to win a playoff series like that. So I definitely think they have to keep an eye on that, because, like you said, they've got one eye on the playoffs. That's what they're playing for. They're not playing for any regular season awards. They're not playing for anything else. They're playing for a championship. So they definitely have to keep an eye on that. BK, we're going to close out with some predictions. We're going to look at the games as we always do. Only 3 games on, quiet schedule on the NBA today. We've got the Jazz at the 76ers there. The Jazz on a 5-game winning streak. The 76ers rejuvenated, but the Jazz are favorites here, $1.68. Philadelphia, $2.27. The line's at 3 and the total's at 2.16. That one's live on NBA League Pass. BK, this one's going to be a good one, actually. Both teams have been playing well. The Jazz are on a nice little streak there. I'm going to go with the Jazz winning away. Close game.
I'm with you. I think Joel will probably go crazy as he does like to do against Gobert and the Jazz. But the Jazz are rolling right now. They're knocking down threes. Joe Ingles has been great for them in this little 5-game stretch. I think the Jazz are a better team than the Sixers right now.
Agreed. Next game up on the schedule, we've got the Lakers at Memphis here. The Lakers are favorites, $1.59. Memphis paying $2.46. The line is at 4 and the total is at 223.5. Grizzlies on the second night of a back-to-back. BK lost at home to the Cavs yesterday. Lakers won against Boston on Tuesday. You know what? The Lakers still are not convincing. They've still got a lot of chemistry issues. But, I've just got a feeling that they're going to win on the road today. They're going to sort of use this as maybe a little bit of a kickstart to their season.
Hey, the Lakers are back. That game against the Celtics was probably the best outing the Big Three has had. And that kind of just goes to show it's like, oh, okay, yeah, when your 3, future Hall of Fame players are all on the floor together, you're a bit of a different team. So I think that Celtics game, had the potential to kind of ignite a little bit of a run. We saw Anthony Davis say that a few weeks back, that they could maybe reel off, a 10, 15 game winning streak. And, this maybe it starts now.
No, I still don't think that one's going to. That's still not happening. But they could put a nice little stretch together. BK, last game we're going to take a look at here is the Denver Nuggets playing at the Spurs. The Spurs favorites at home, $1.73. The Nuggets paying $2.18. The line is at 2.5, and the total's at 215.5. They're live on NBA League Pass. The Spurs have lost 2 in a row after having won 4 in a row. BK, Nuggets are right at about 500, but obviously Nikola Jokic has been back, averaging 26 points in his last 5 games. They won yesterday in overtime, so they're playing on the second night of a back-to-back. I kind of like the Spurs, though, at home, and that's purely the only reason I'm picking them, because they're playing at home.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Coming off that big overtime game against the Pelicans, then you got to travel. It's a lot in a short space of time, and I like what the Spurs put together in that little run. I'm very intrigued by this team. Dejounte Murray has been killing. Derek White's been great. So I'm a rock with the Spurs today.
We're both going with the Spurs on that one there, BK. We're going to take a quick look at the NBL game that is on tonight as well. We've got the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix against the New Zealand Breakers. Phoenix, big favourites here, $1.27. New Zealand Breakers, $3.80. The line is at 8, and the total is at 168. That one's live on ESPN tonight. BK, I like this Phoenix team. I watched that game last week. My man, Xavier Munford, really showed out there, hitting some big shots. I can't go against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix in this one here. And I think they're going to win pretty easily too.
Yeah, I think the odds in their favor for a reason. I'm with you. I'm a fan of what they're doing out there with the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix.
All right, there you go. I think did we agree on? We just agreed.
We went
on all
4
four
for
of our
4.
picks, didn't we? That's going to be a first this year.
That's because my beloved Raptors aren't on the schedule.
and I've just stopped picking against the Knicks, and I don't care whenever they play. All right, BK. We'll see you again on Monday morning. That's it for this episode. We'll be back on Monday morning as usual. This has been the Last Shot NBA show here on Little Birdie TV, brought to you by our good friends at topsport.com.au, and we'll see you on Monday.